Hello, and welcome to the 63rd episode of Jazzology, presented by Savage Content. I'm your host, Willard Jenkins, and we're here alternating Fridays, giving two jazz fans the opportunity to compete against each other for a chance to win $100. Each contestant will be asked a question worth 2 points. If they're unable to answer correctly, their opponent will have a chance to steal the question for 1 point. We'll ask 10 questions, and at the end of the 10 questions, the person with the lowest score will get a bonus question for the opportunity to tie the score, no matter how far they're behind in the score. If they're successful, the game will go to sudden death. In sudden death, the person in the lead at the end of regulation will go first, and each contestant will take turns trying to answer the sudden death multiple choice question until we have a winner. And now let's meet this week's contestants. Our reigning, I should say long reigning Jazzology champion is Matt Merewitz. Matt Merewitz is the founder and director of Fully Altered Media since 2007. Matt Merewitz has become known as one of the most in-demand publicists and consultants in the world of creative music. Matt resides an hour north of New York City with his wife, daughter, and his Labradoodle, Sonny. Our challenger for this 63rd episode of Jazzology is Matt Fleeger, who has been a radio broadcaster for nearly 30 years, with 24 of those 30 years in jazz formats. During his time as the program director for KMHD in Portland, Oregon, he conceptualized and launched the Jazz Without Boundaries format. This radio format sees jazz as the life giver to all popular forms of music, and thus KMHD examines jazz alongside the other genres it gave birth to, like R&B, soul, funk, global sounds, and hip-hop. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
We got Matt and Matt today. All right. And I'll get today's Jazzology, and as our reigning champion, Matt Merewitz goes first. You ready, Matt?
Ready.
All right, Matt. Matt Merewitz, we got to differentiate today. In what proved to be a furious period of self-reflection and recording sessions, which of these John Coltrane recordings came first? Was it A, Live at Birdland, B, Live at the Vanguard Again, C, A Love Supreme, D, the John Coltrane Quartet Plays, or E, New Thing at Newport? Which of those recordings came first?
Do you mean released first or recorded first?
Released first.
Well, the deep reflection thing would seem to indicate A Love Supreme. Can you show the question one more time?
In what period proved to be a furious period of self-reflection, and knowing John Coltrane's history, that could have been his entire life. In what proved to be a furious period of self-reflection and recording sessions, which of these John Coltrane recordings came out first? Was it A, Live at Birdland, B, Live at the Vanguard Again, C, A Love Supreme, D, the John Coltrane Quartet Plays, or E, New Thing at Newport?
Okay, so for me, it's between. Well, I think I think I'm going to go with C, A Love Supreme.
That is incorrect. So Matt Fleeger with an opportunity to steal the question. In what proved to be a furious period of self-reflection and recording sessions, which of these John Coltrane recordings came first? Was it A, Live at Birdland, B, Live at the Vanguard Again, C, A Love Supreme has been eliminated, D, the John Coltrane Quartet Plays, or E, New Thing at Newport?
Well, I think so. I mean, yeah, I agree with Matt. A Love Supreme was the obvious answer. And for me, it was between A Love Supreme and A New Thing at Newport. And thinking about record labels, and they usually get the idea of a sound of an artist before they're going to release, and they're obviously concerned about marketing. I'm going to go with E, New Thing at Newport, titling it and preparing the audience for what was to come.
That is incorrect as well. The correct answer to that question is A, Live at Birdland. All right, Matt Fleeger, you're up next. Matt, which of the following is the oldest continually running jazz festival? Would that be A, the Newport Jazz Festival, B, the Monterey Jazz Festival, C, Jazz Festival Juan Lepin in France, D, the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland, or E, Jazz Jamboree in Warsaw, Poland?
Okay. So having watched this show, I know that this is likely set up to trick me, because my first guess would be the Newport Jazz Festival. I mean, that's obviously the longest running festival in the United States, I believe. But I have a feeling that maybe one of these Euro festivals, given the love for jazz in France, thinking back to Django Reinhardt, I'm going to take a risk here and guess C, the Jazz Festival Juan Lepin in France.
That is incorrect. Matt Merewitz with an opportunity to steal the point. Matt, which of the following is the oldest continually running jazz festival? Is that A, Newport Jazz Festival, B, Monterey Jazz Festival, C, Jazz Festival Juan Lepin in France, D, the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland, or E, Jazz Jamboree in Warsaw, Poland, and C, Juan Lepin has been eliminated?
Yeah, that was a good guess by Matt, because that festival is known for these recordings with Ella and Duke, particularly, and, those were in the 50s. But I think that the key ingredient here is continuously running, because obviously the Newport Jazz Festival had off years when there were riots and when they moved to New York, and even a couple of years, I think it didn't happen at all, or it happened as the JBC Jazz Festival in New York. So anyway, I don't think it's Poland. My feeling about Montreux is that Montreux started like maybe in the late 60s, early 70s. Now that could be totally wrong, but that's when it started to pop up on records live at Montreux. So knowing about Newport, thinking it's not Warsaw, and knowing it's not Juan Lepin from Matt's answer, I'm going to go with B, the Monterey Jazz Festival.
That is correct. And you correctly cited the key to that question. The key to that question being continuously running. Because as you mentioned, the Newport Jazz Festival, there was a riot at the Newport Jazz Festival, and the city of Newport actually closed them down. So George Wein had to move that festival to New York for a few years, and then he resumed the festival in Newport, but Monterey continued to operate. So the answer to the question is indeed the Monterey Jazz Festival. So Matt Merewitz, you're up next. Matt, which of the following Randy Weston recordings coincided with the major African Rhythms Festival, organized in part by Randy himself, in Tangier, Morocco on September 1st, 1972? Would that be A, Uhuru Africa, B, African Cookbook, C, Blue Moses, D, Hanja, or E, Berkshire Blues?
This is a good question. I wonder how many questions in Jazzology are disproportionately attributed to Randy Weston, given
There haven't been that many. I've governed myself.
all right. Willard's got a great book on Randy Weston if you haven't read it yet. So I think African Cookbook was recorded in the 60s. I know Blue Moses was definitely recorded in the 70s, but I think that, to me, that doesn't really evoke Tangiers. Uhuru Africa, that kind of implies like South Africa. I think Uhuru is like what is that tribe in South Africa? The it's
Uhuru basically means Freedom Africa.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm thinking. I mean, this could be a total trick question, but I'm going to go with D, Tanja.
That is incorrect. Matt Fleeger with an opportunity to steal the question or to steal the point. Matt Fleeger, which of the following Randy Weston recordings coincided with the major African Rhythms Festival organized in part by Randy Weston himself in Tangier, Morocco on September 1st, 1972? Would that be A, Uhuru Africa, B, African Cookbook, C, Blue Moses, D, Tanja has been eliminated, or E, Berkshire Blues?
Okay. Well, I agree with Matt. I think that African Cookbook, that was the first Randy Weston album I ever bought, and I believe that's a 60s record. I don't remember the years of Uhuru Africa. I think Tanja is also a 60s record. And Berkshire Blues, that one is not in my wheelhouse. Blue Moses is a CTI album, which means that it was likely released in the 70s. Not all those albums were necessarily recorded in the 70s. I mean, late 60s too for CTI, obviously. But I believe Blue Moses, if I remember correctly, listening to this album, which I wish I could go to my record collection out there, it's in it. I believe this has some live recording on it. So I'm going to go C, Blue Moses.
That is correct. And since you guys are bona fide jazz heads, I'll give you a little story about that record. That record helped to bail Randy out from a lot of debt from that festival. He had an enormous debt after producing that festival. The Blue Moses record, which he always laughingly referred to as his hit record, was indeed the one that came right after, was recorded right after the festival, and really helped to bail him out. And as you know, with the CTI records, Creed Taylor had his stable of musicians. So Creed engaged, and Randy was cool with the musicians he engaged. Creed engaged Ron Carter, Ayrton, Billy Cobham, and whatnot, Grover Washington, Hubert Laws, and Freddie Hubbard to play on that record. And Randy initially had Melvin Liston do the arrangements. So they made the recording with Melvin Liston's arrangements. Then they went back to Morocco, and when the master arrived in Tangier and Randy and his son Azzedine listened to it, they were shocked at the orchestration, because in the in-between time, Creed Taylor had engaged his guy Don Sebesky to write new orchestrations for that record. So that's a little story behind that particular record, Blue Moses, which is on the CTI label. So Matt Fleeger, you're next. Matt, whose centennial birth year was celebrated at the recent DC Jazz Fest just last weekend? Was it A, Sonny Stitt, B, Max Roach, C, J.J. Johnson, D, Sarah Vaughan, or E, Charlie Rouse?
Okay, this is going to have to be a guess. I wish I had paid attention now to some of the press coverage from the festival, because I would probably know the answer easily to this. So let's parse this out real quick. I think Charlie Rouse is too young, maybe, to be 100 or to have been.
No, actually, I will say all of these musicians have a centennial in 2024.
Okay, well, that making the question extra tricky then. So that does help a little bit, though. If we're going to celebrate a 100th year anniversary of their birth with one of these musicians, I'm just going to go who I would pick, and that would be the great Max Roach.
That is incorrect. Matt Merewitz, whose centennial birth year was celebrated at the recent DC Jazz Fest? Was it A, Sonny Stitt, B, Max Roach, whose centennial several organizations are celebrating, has been eliminated, C, J.J. Johnson, D, Sarah Vaughan, or E, Charlie Rouse?
So as you know, Willard, I was in town, although unfortunately didn't make it to the festival, just family stuff. But I think it's between Sonny Stitt and J.J. Johnson, although it could have been Sarah Vaughan. I have this gut feeling that it was A, Sonny Stitt.
That would be correct. And boiling it down in the process of elimination that these questions often require, one clue for you as a publicist is that the program director at DC's jazz station is Katia Stitt, and she the daughter of Sonny Stitt, and she did indeed produce this concert. But there could have been a little trick there, because Charlie Rouse, letter E, for example, is a DC native. So it could have been that. But you are correct. We did celebrate Sonny Stitt's centennial last weekend with a wonderful concert. So Matt Merewitz, it's your turn again. Matt, drummer, percussionist, and occasional vocalist Kahil El-Zabar has led his group known as the Ethnic Heritage Ensemble for how many years? Would that be A, 50, B, 40 years, C, 25 years, D, 30 years, or E, 45 years?
So I know Matt Fleeger is pretty upset that he didn't get this question, because he's playing that record. It's a good record. I saw them do the performance at Winter Jazz Fest at Superior Ingredients. It was a great show. I've been seeing Kahil El-Zabar for, probably 20 years now, a little over 20 years. And I happen to know that there's a big 50th anniversary of this group. It started in, I believe, 1973 or 74. 2024 would be 50 years. So I'm pretty positive it's A, 50 years.
That is correct. That is correct. And in fact, that 50-year mark is celebrated on the cover of one of the recent issues of Downbeat magazine.
Yes.
One of the keys. This week's mid-show break is brought to you by a new podcast for film buffs. It's called Savage Movie Night Podcast. Each episode explores a film's production, plot, actors, behind-the-scenes issues, and curious facts behind films that impacted, or in some cases should have impacted, American culture. Led by three hosts from three different generations, Savage Movie Night podcast is available now on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and other leading podcast services. So grab some popcorn and subscribe now. So, Matt Fleeger, you're new to Jazzology. We have to ask you our key question. That is, how did you fall in love with jazz?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, and I think most people's musical tastes are formed when they're like early teens. I have always, throughout my life, been fortunate to be an avid skateboarder. And one of the first ways I was exposed to jazz was through skateboard videos, specifically the 1991 video by the blind skateboard company called Video Days. And one of the progenitors of street skateboarding, Mark Gonzalez, had chosen, a bebop song to skate to. And it was really out of place against like all the normal, like, kind of punk rock and alternative music that was in skateboarding. And so it caused this like shock where I was like, what is this? But it, you could feel like his improvised movements working against this music, which was interesting. And later on, when a couple of years later, I went to middle school in DC for a little bit. I'm originally from Pittsburgh. But when I went to middle school, I was really into the punk rock scene in middle school. And so I saw the band Fugazi a number of times when I lived in DC. And one of the members of the band was wearing a Coltrane shirt. And I was like, well, if they like Coltrane, I probably like Coltrane. I'll just go next time I'm at the record store and buy a record. And so I just went to the record store blindly and picked out the Coltrane record that spoke to me, which was Interstellar Space, which is an interesting place to start with Coltrane. And I remember putting it on and being like, what? These guys like this music? This is crazy. And, but it wasn't when that's how I started to like jazz. When I really fell in love, like in platonic love with jazz, was when I started working at KRTU in San Antonio. And I had a colleague that I worked with there whose name is Aaron Ellington Prado, who had been steeped in jazz music since he was probably before he was born. They were probably playing, he was hearing it in the womb. And when I started programming music on that station, what ensued were a number of conversations that I cherish to this day that I had with Aaron about the music. And about the music, and these questions or these conversations would always lead to a question for me. And the question was always, what is jazz? Because, what I'd hear from a lot of people would be like, oh, that's not really jazz. That like that Herbie Hancock fusion album, that's not really jazz. Or that's, like from the kind of purist sensibility.
Right. It
fostered this question in me that I have been trying to answer for 20 plus years. And that is, what is jazz? I think 20 years later, I'm okay with like not really having an answer to that question, which is kind of a beautiful thing. It means the music is mystical in a way. And I think that's ultimately what all of us love about this music, is this deep sense of mystery. When we go to watch a performance, you don't know what's going to happen. When you listen to something new or explore something new, or you watch, as musicians you love, push the boundaries or develop that telepathic communication between each other, I think we get to touch something that feels sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes really gorgeous and beautiful. But ultimately this kind of thing that cuts to the core of humanity, and like, what is our place here in this cosmos, and what are we here to do? So, I mean, for me, that question of what is jazz is what continues to help me to fall in love with the music.
Well, that was a great soliloquy, man. And I was born in Pittsburgh myself, so I can appreciate that as well. Matt Merewitz, you've answered this question before. I want to ask you a new question, and that is, tell us, what's your favorite jazz club and why?
So It's hard to say because there's nostalgia and then there's like present tense. I think the Vanguard can't be beat, the Village Vanguard. I think that there's so much history there. Coltrane played on that very stage. Miles played on that very stage.
You feel the history walking down those steps.
Yeah, and it's the same place, the same stairs, the same walls, the same stage, the same carpet probably. Maybe it's had an upgrade or a couple washings, but it's that feeling that you're in, like, I've never been to a place. I guess, I've never been to Israel to see the Wailing Wall. I've never been to the Hajj in Mecca, but I feel like the Vanguard is the closest thing we have to a holy site in jazz.
A shrine.
Yeah.
A shrine, yes, indeed. I can appreciate that, Matt. Our record of the week, this week's spotlight record, comes from bassist Esperanza Spalding and the great Brazilian vocalist Milton Nascimento, titled simply Milton plus Esperanza on the Concord label. And Matt Fleeger is smiling because he knows about Esperanza as a Portland native.
Right, yeah. Beautiful album.
You're up next, Matt Fleeger. All right. Which of the following jazz musicians had a tenor saxophone playing dad? Would that be A, Jan Garbarek, B, Charles Lloyd, C, Joe Lovano, D, Michael Brecker, or E, Marcus Strickland?
Oh, wow. Okay. This is a tough question. So yeah, I do not know the answer to this. So I'm going to have to process of elimination here. I'm going to take out Jan Garbarek because of, maybe I always feel like the Europeans kind of, maybe picked this up and didn't have the same like sort of family traditions we would have had in the United States because jazz became popular there a little bit later than it did here. I'm drawn to Charles Lloyd and I'm drawn to Joe Lovano. Marcus maybe too, but this is going to be a guess. I'm going to go B, Charles Lloyd.
That is incorrect. Matt Merewitz with an opportunity to steal the question. Which of the following jazz musicians had a tenor saxophone playing dad? Would that have been A, Jan Garbarek, B, Charles Lloyd? Has been eliminated. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, he's been eliminated. C, Joe Lovano, D, Michael Brecker, or E, Marcus Strickland?
So I know immediately the answer to this question. I thought this was going to be one of those all the above trick questions that you love to throw in there, Willard. But this would have to be C, Joe Lovano, his father being Tony Big T Lovano from Cleveland, Ohio.
That is correct. And, having grown up in Cleveland myself, like Joe, Big T, he was very popular around town. And he was a guy who was responsible for a lot of musicians' union gigs for musicians. So he was a very popular guy around town. I remember once going into a place in Cleveland called the Smiling Dog Saloon, and Elvin Jones was playing. And I walked in right after Joe walked into the club, and Elvin Jones grabbed Joe. Elvin was sitting at the bar. And he said, "Where's Big T?" And that's when I knew that Big T, Tony Lovano, was someone that the musicians certainly respected. So the answer to the question is yes. It was Joe Lovano, whose father was Big T, Tony Lovano. So Matt Merewitz, your turn next. Matt, Bud Powell's tune Whale was issued on the Savoy Records label under what title? Was it A, Fool's Fancy, B, Indiana, C, Barry's Bop, D, Klook, or E, Nostalgia?
Whale. Oh boy, this is one that Ethan Iverson would have definitely gotten immediately.
Well, you know, the degree of difficulty goes up when you're a champion.
Luke refers to Kenny Clark, I'm pretty sure. And, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if Bud Powell wrote a tune about Kenny Clark, given that they definitely played together. You know, maybe the question is like, if Whale was a contrafact of Indiana. I just don't know. I really don't know. So, I mean, this is just me going blind. I'm going to go D, Klook.
That's incorrect. Matt Fleeger with an opportunity to steal the point. Matt, Bud Powell's tune Whale was issued on the Savoy Records label under what title? A, Fool's Fancy, B, Indiana, C, Barry's Bop, D, Klook has been eliminated, or E, Nostalgia?
Well, I think Matt helped me a little bit on this one. And, you know, it's because so many songs are based on this song this was going to be the guess. Because, you know, the other thing is when a record label does this, right, they're going to take a song and it's called something, right, that I suppose that was his conception. He wanted it to be called Whale. And then they were like, we're going to change the name to something that the public will be more familiar with. That's my guess. You can tell how I felt about the record industry back in those days. But I would go with B, Indiana, for my answer.
That too is incorrect. The correct answer is A, Fool's Fancy. Whale was initially issued on Savoy as Fool's Fancy.
All right, Matt, if you would, can you tell us can you tell us the story behind that? Do you know it?
No, I don't know the story behind it. I just know that that's what it was. Okay. I wish I did, because I wonder why they would change it. But it was indeed Fool's Fancy. So, Matt Fleeger. Matt, which of the following jazz artists is from Vancouver, BC? Is it A, Ingrid Jensen, B, Chris Davis, C, Kelly Lee Evans, D, Jane Bennett, or E, Allison Au? And for those not familiar, Ingrid Jensen is a trumpet player, Chris Davis is a piano player, Kelly Lee Evans is a vocalist, Jane Bennett is a saxophonist and flutist, and Allison Au is a saxophonist.
Okay. So I think Jane Bennett is from Toronto, if I remember correctly. I wish I was more familiar with Allison Au or Kelly Lee Evans. I'm not sure what part of Canada Chris Davis is from. And I think Ingrid is also from the eastern part of Canada. Maybe. So what I'm saying is I'll be guessing on this answer, but there is sort of a tradition of vocalists coming out of Vancouver. although as you almost tricked another contestant with on another show with the Diana Krall question, who we always say on the radio is from Vancouver, even though she's from Nanaimo, BC, which I know now. But anyways, I need to make up some points here, so I need to get one, but I think I got to go for risk first. And so I'm going to take I think it might be Ingrid Jensen, but I'm going to guess C, Kelly Lee Evans.
That is incorrect. Matt Merewitz with an opportunity to steal the point. Matt, which of the following jazz artists is from Vancouver, BC? Is it A, Ingrid Jensen, B, Chris Davis, and Kelly Lee Evans, who actually is from Eastern Canada? She's been eliminated. D, Jane Bennett, or E, Allison Owl?
So I think I'm pretty sure that both Ingrid Jensen and Chris Davis are from Vancouver. I could be wrong, but I know that they're both deeply affiliated with that scene. Now, I've represented Chris Davis years ago, and I definitely know for a fact that she's from Vancouver. So I'm going to go with B, Chris Davis, but yeah, I think that could be a little technicality.
That is correct. And the key to that is that Ingrid Jensen is actually from what is known as West Vancouver, whereas Chris Davis is from Vancouver. And the others are all from the eastern part of Canada. So Matt Merewitz, you're up next. Matt, who produced the recordings released on the Bop label? Was it A, Teddy Reeg, B, Gene Norman, C, Norman Granz, D, Creed Taylor, or E, Sonny Berman?
I have literally no idea. I mean, you brought up Teddy Reeg as an answer on other shows, and I don't know his name. But clearly, if you brought him up as an answer, as a potential answer on multiple shows, it's something I need to get hip to. I kind of sort of know the name Gene Norman. I don't know what label he's affiliated with. Definitely not Norman Granz, and definitely not Creed Taylor. Sonny Berman, I don't know. But, yeah, so for me, it's got to be between A, B, and E. And just because this answer has come up repeatedly, I'm going to go with A, Teddy Reeg.
That is incorrect. And Matt Fleeger with an opportunity to steal the point. Matt, who produced the recordings released on the Bop label? Was it A, Teddy Reeg has been eliminated, B, Gene Norman, C, Norman Granz, D, Creed Taylor, or E, Sonny Berman?
I, too, am not all that familiar with the Bop label, which I assume existed probably in the late 40s into the early to mid 50s. And I'm going to speculate that maybe part of me wanted to go to Norman Granz because Norman Granz had this proclivity for subsidiary labels, like having. But then I thought, well, maybe I don't know if Creed Taylor was active at that time. Maybe Creed's early career might have been in there. So, Norman Granz is not the obvious answer here. but I'm going to try it. C, Norman Granz.
The correct answer is B, Gene Norman. Gene Norman produced the recordings released on the Bop label. So, Matt Fleeger, we got to play some catch-up here.
Yes, we do.
Matt, Clifford Brown's tune, Sweet Clifford, is based on what old standard tune? Is it A, Indiana? B, All the Things You Are? C, Sweet Georgia Brown? D, Embraceable You? Or E, I'll Remember April?
Okay, so, and the name of the song again was Sweet Clifford, right?
Sweet Clifford.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, obviously Sweet Georgia Brown is a trick in here. That's too obvious. And I'm trying to remember what this tune sounds like. And I feel like the melody is similar to All the Things You Are. But also we have Indiana back in the mix here again, which so many songs are based on. I mean, really all of these, honestly. But yeah, I have been stabbing in the dark all day, so why not keep it up? I'm going to go with B, All the Things You Are.
That's incorrect. Matt Merewitz with an opportunity to steal. Matt, Clifford Brown's tune, Sweet Clifford, is based on what old standard tune? A, Indiana has been eliminated. B, All the Things You Are.
Actually, I guess B.
Yeah, you guessed B. I'm sorry. Indiana, A. B, All the Things You Are has been eliminated. C, Sweet Georgia Brown. D, Embraceable You. Or E, I'll Remember April.
So I'm actually going to go the opposite direction on this and say the obvious answer is C, Sweet Georgia Brown.
That's correct. And your process of elimination was the sweet aspect, right? So Matt Merewitz is up 7-1, but Matt Fleeger has an opportunity to catch up in our bonus question. So here we go, Matt. Matt, when Louis Armstrong left New Orleans in 1922 to rejoin the King Oliver Band in Chicago, what was the nightclub where the King Oliver Band was in residence? Was it A, Grand Terrace, B, The Regal, C, Lincoln Gardens, D, Rum Boogie Cafe, or E, The Fine and Mellow?
So I would imagine if Louis left New Orleans to join King Oliver's band, it would probably have been in a pretty prestigious club in Chicago. So, and I don't know any of these clubs, and I don't have the greatest knowledge of 1920s jazz. So I'm going to eliminate Rum Boogie Cafe because it feels like he probably wouldn't have left New Orleans to go to play in a cafe. We're playing in a cafe anyways. I also don't imagine at that time in the 1920s there was probably a club named The Fine and Mellow. So that leaves us with the Grand Terrace, the Regal, and Lincoln Gardens. And so again, I'm drawn to the middle of Lincoln Gardens. C would be my answer. Wild guess.
And in one fell swoop, Matt Fleeger, you have caught up. It was indeed the Lincoln Gardens where King
I
Oliver
thought
was
for sure I had it in the bag.
when Pops came to Chicago. So now we're at sudden death. And Matt Merewitz will go first. Matt Merewitz, the contemporary guitarist Julian Lage, is from what state? Is he from A, New York, B, California, C, Illinois, D, Florida, or E, Maryland?
I remember seeing the documentary about him called Jules at 8 when I was like, I don't know, I think 23 or 24. And that was following him around in California. And I really do associate him with a West Coast vibe. Now, it could be New York and he moved to California, but my gut is telling me B, California.
And Matt Fleeger, I suppose that's why Matt Merewitz is the reigning champion.
Yes, it is.
Matt Merewitz always seems to have a pretty good process of elimination going on these programs. And Julian Lage is indeed from California. So congratulations to Matt Merewitz on winning our 63rd episode of Jazzology. We came close to knocking him out of the box. We encourage everyone to try your hand and play Jazzology. And if anyone watching would like to become a contestant on Jazzology, click the link and simply fill out the form. You must be 18 years old or older, and be sure to follow us on social media at Jazzology Trivia Show to get all the latest news and updates. Thanks so much to Matt Merewitz and Matt Fleeger, and to everyone who joined us for our 63rd episode of Jazzology today. Remember, you can check out Jazzology every other Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you missed the show live, you can find the archive on the Savage Content YouTube channel. Thanks to you both, Matt and Matt.
Thank you.
All right.
Cool.